Jake Morrison's eyes snapped open to the familiar ceiling of his cramped Detroit apartment. But something felt different. The morning light filtering through his blinds seemed brighter, and there was an odd humming in the air that made his skin tingle. He blinked twice, expecting his vision to clear, but the sensation remained. Then he turned his head. A woman lay beside him, and Jake's heart nearly stopped. She wasn't human. Couldn't be. Her skin shimmered with a subtle silver luminescence, like moonlight on water. She was tall, probably 6 feet, with an elegant bone structure that seemed almost too perfect. Her hair was a cascade of platinum that caught the light in impossible ways, and when she opened her eyes, they glowed with a soft violet radiance. "Good morning, Jake," she said, her voice melodic and strangely familiar. Jake scrambled backward, so fast he nearly fell off the bed, his heart hammering against his ribs. "What the hell? Who are you? How did you get in here?" His hand instinctively reached for the nightstand where he kept his service pistol, but she didn't move, didn't seem threatened. "My name is Kira," she said, sitting up gracefully. She wore what looked like a form-fitting bodysuit that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. "I entered while you slept. I needed to establish neural synchronization to communicate with you properly." "Neural what?" Jake's voice cracked. This had to be a dream, some kind of fever hallucination. Maybe he'd been drinking too much lately, dealing with the nightmares from Syria. "This isn't real. You're not real." Kira tilted her head, studying him with those impossibly bright eyes. "You're experiencing cognitive dissonance. It's understandable. Your species hasn't had official contact with mine." She moved slowly like a cat, and Jake noticed she was barefoot. Even her feet were elegant, with that same silver sheen to her skin. "My species?" Jake laughed, but it came out more like a bark. "Lady, I don't know what kind of cosplay convention you escaped from, but—" "Jake Morrison," she interrupted, her voice taking on a serious tone. "Born August 15, 1997, in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Former Army Corps of Engineers, 12th Brigade. Served 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Syria. Discharged with honors after the Aleppo incident where you saved 17 civilians from a collapsed building." Jake's blood ran cold. Those details weren't public knowledge. "How do you know that?" "We've been watching you," Kira said simply. "Your actions in Syria, your courage in the face of impossible odds, your compassion for strangers, it marked you as exceptional among your kind." "We?" Jake's mind raced. "Who's we?" Kira stood, and Jake was struck by how graceful she was, how every movement seemed purposeful. "I am Valorian. My people have been observing your species for what you would call decades. We've been impressed." "Valorian," Jake repeated, the word feeling strange on his tongue. "You're saying you're an alien?" "I am," she confirmed. "And I'm here because my people are dying." The simple statement hit Jake like a physical blow. Something in her tone, in the way her luminous eyes dimmed slightly, told him she wasn't lying, wasn't playing some elaborate game. His engineering mind, trained to solve problems and assess threats, began to engage despite his shock. "Dying? How?" he asked quietly. "We've lost something essential to survival," Kira said, moving to his window and looking out at the Detroit skyline. "Something your species has in abundance: emotion, passion, the ability to form true bonds." She turned back to him. "The ability to reproduce naturally." Jake stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "And you're here because—" "Because I was sent to find a suitable candidate for genetic compatibility," Kira said, her violet eyes meeting his. "To find someone who could help save my people." She took a step closer. "And after studying your species, after watching you specifically, I made my choice." "Your choice?" "I chose you, Jake Morrison." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Jake felt the world tilt slightly, as if gravity had shifted. This beautiful, impossible woman had just turned his mundane life completely upside down. I don't understand, he whispered. Kira smiled then, and it transformed her face completely. You will, she said softly. But first you need to know why you're so important. Why, out of 8 billion humans, I came to your bed. Jake sat on the edge of his bed, running his hands through his hair as he tried to make sense of what Kira was telling him. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting long shadows across his small apartment, but nothing felt real anymore. You're saying your entire species is dying because you can't feel emotions? He asked, looking up at her. Kira nodded, her luminous violet eyes filled with something that looked remarkably like sadness. We evolved beyond them millennia ago, or so we thought. We believed emotions were primitive, inefficient. We enhanced. Ourselves became purely logical beings. She moved to sit beside him, careful to maintain some distance. But we discovered too late that emotions weren't weaknesses. They were the foundation of life itself. I don't understand. Love, Jake, passion. The drive to create, to bond, to sacrifice for another. Her voice grew softer. Without these, we lost the ability to form the deep connections necessary for reproduction. Our birth rates plummeted. We're a species of immortals, who can no longer create new life. Jake stared at her profile, noting the perfect symmetry of her features, the way her silver skin seemed to glow from within. How many of you are left? Fewer than 10,000, scattered across 3 worlds. She turned to face him fully. I am what you might call an ambassador, but my true role is genetic scout. I was sent to find a species compatible with ours, one that could help us rediscover what we lost. And you picked humans. We studied hundreds of species across the galaxy. None matched your unique combination of intelligence, emotional depth, and genetic adaptability. She reached out slowly, her fingertips barely brushing his hand. Your species feels everything so intensely. Love, hope, sacrifice, joy. You create art from pain, find beauty in tragedy. You're capable of both tremendous cruelty and breathtaking compassion. Jake felt a strange tingling where her skin touched his like a gentle electric current. The Syria thing, you said that's why you chose me specifically. Kira's expression grew intense. You spent 18 hours digging through rubble with your bare hands to save people you'd never met. When the building collapsed further, trapping you inside, you didn't think about your own safety. You protected those civilians with your body, used your engineering knowledge to create supports that kept everyone alive until rescue arrived. The memories flooded back, the screaming, the dust, the weight of concrete on his back as he shielded a young girl from falling debris. Anyone would have done the same. No, Kira said firmly. We observed 17 similar situations with other humans. Most helped, yes, but few showed your level of selfless determination. Fewer still had the technical skills to save so many lives. Her hand covered his completely now. You represent the best of humanity, Jake. Courage, intelligence, compassion. Everything my people have forgotten. Jake looked down at their joined hands. Her skin was warm, almost feverish, and that tingling sensation was spreading up his arm. What exactly are you proposing? A bonding, she said simply. A merging of our genetic patterns that would allow us to reproduce. But more than that, a sharing of consciousness that would help my people remember how to feel. You're talking about having kids with me, children who would carry the best of both our species. They would have our longevity and enhanced abilities, but with your emotional capacity and creativity. She paused. And they would be the bridge that saves my people from extinction. Jake pulled his hand away, standing up abruptly. This is insane. You're asking me to leave Earth, leave everything I know, to go off with someone I just met to have alien babies. I know it sounds crazy? Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. Lady, it sounds completely insane. I'm a washed-up soldier living in a crappy apartment in Detroit. I fix air conditioners for a living. Why would you want someone like me for something this important? Kira stood as well, and suddenly the small space between them felt charged. Because you don't see yourself clearly. You're not washed up. You're healing. You came home from war, and instead of letting it break you, you found a way to help people in a different way. You fix things, Jake. You make broken things work again. She stepped closer, and Jake could smell something like ozone and flowers, clean and electric. My people are broken. We need someone who knows how to fix things. And if I say no? For the first time, Kira looked vulnerable. Then my people will fade away over the next few centuries. We'll become a cautionary tale about a species that evolved itself into extinction. She met his eyes. And you'll go back to your life, never knowing what you could have become. Jake felt something shift in his chest, a familiar sensation he'd experienced in Syria when faced with impossible choices. How would it work, this bonding thing? It begins with trust, Kira said, reaching out to cup his face gently. With openness, with allowing me to share your emotions, your memories, your essence. Is that what you did last night? While I was sleeping? Only the surface level, enough to learn your language and basic thoughts. True bonding requires conscious participation from both parties. Her thumb traced along his cheekbone. It requires intimacy, Jake. Physical and emotional. The way she said it made his pulse quicken. I mean connection in every sense of the word. Her violet eyes seemed to glow brighter. Let me show you. Before Jake could respond, Kira placed her palm against his forehead. Suddenly, he was elsewhere, floating in space, looking down at a beautiful blue-green world. He could feel Kira's thoughts, her memories, her desperate hope mixed with fear. He saw her people, elegant and tall like her, moving through crystalline cities with precise efficiency but no joy, no laughter, no tears. He felt her loneliness, centuries of it, and her growing desperation as she watched her species slowly dying. And underneath it all, he felt something else, a growing warmth, a connection to him that was already forming roots in her consciousness. Then he was back in his apartment gasping, his hands gripping her shoulders. That's what bonding feels like, Kira whispered. But deeper, more complete. We would truly become one. Jake looked into her eyes, seeing not just an alien anymore, but a woman who had traveled across the galaxy to find him. Someone who believed in him more than he believed in himself. I need time to think, he said quietly. We have until sunset, Kira replied. After that, my ship must move to avoid detection. As if summoned by her words, a low rumble passed overhead, too deep to be thunder. Jake looked toward the window, but Kira was watching him. Time is running out, Jake, for both of us. Jake spent the next 2 hours asking questions, and Kira answered each one with patient detail. She showed him images of Valorian technology, cities that floated in the clouds, ships that could fold space, medical advances that had eliminated disease and aging. But with each wonder she revealed, Jake also saw the emptiness behind it. We created paradise, Kira explained, sitting cross-legged on his couch, but forgot what makes life worth living. And you think humans can teach you that? I think you already are. She gestured to the small apartment around them. This place, it's not grand or luxurious, but it's filled with personality. These books, these photographs, the way you arranged, everything. It tells a story about who you are. Jake looked around at his modest belongings with new eyes. It's just stuff. No, Kira said firmly. It's memory, emotion. The cup you drink coffee from every morning because it reminds you of your grandmother. The photo of your unit because you honor your fallen friends. The plant you keep alive because caring for something makes you feel useful. She smiled. My people have forgotten how to attach meaning to objects, to moments, to each other. Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp sound from outside. Helicopter rotors. Jake moved to the window and peered through the blinds. 3 black helicopters circled the building like predators. Shit, he muttered. Kira, we need to... I know. She was already standing, her body tense with alert energy. They've been Tracking residual energy signatures from my ship. Who are they? Your government's extraterrestrial response team. They've been monitoring unusual electromagnetic readings across the Great Lakes region. She moved to him, pressing something small and silver into his hand. This will mask your biosignature temporarily. Jake looked down at the device, which felt warm and seemed to pulse with its own light. How do you know about them? We've been observing your species for decades, remember? We know about your secret agencies, your contingency plans for contact scenarios. She placed her hands on his shoulders. Jake, they won't just want to study me. They'll want to study you too, once they realize we've bonded. But we haven't we? Kira's violet eyes searched his face. Can't you feel it? The connection forming between us? Jake realized she was right. Since their mental link earlier, he'd been aware of her in a way that went beyond the physical. He could sense her emotions, her growing attachment to him, her fear for her people's future, and underneath it all, something deeper. A pull toward her that felt almost gravitational. I can feel you, he admitted quietly. And I can feel you. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the intricate patterns in her silver skin, like circuit boards made of starlight. Your curiosity, your protective instincts, your desire to help others even when it costs you everything. Then helicopter sounds grew louder, accompanied by the rumble of vehicles below. Jake could hear voices in the hallway, his neighbors being questioned, boots on the stairs. We don't have much time, Kira said. Jake, I need you to know something. When I first saw your memories, felt your emotions, I was only supposed to assess compatibility. But what happened? She paused, seeming to struggle with words. I wasn't prepared for how it would affect me. What do you mean? I think I'm falling in love with you. The words came out in a rush, and Jake saw vulnerability in her expression he hadn't seen before. Not just bonding, not just genetic compatibility, love. The way your species experiences it. Jake felt his heart skip. Kira, I know it's impossible. I know I'm asking you to leave everything, but I had to tell you because... Heavy footsteps in the hallway cut her off. Jake could hear his neighbor's doors being kicked in, systematic searches moving toward his apartment. He had maybe 3 minutes. Because what? He asked, pulling her closer. Because I think you're falling in love with me too. She was right. Despite the impossibility of the situation, despite knowing her for less than a day, Jake felt something, profound connecting them. Maybe it was the mental link, or maybe it was simply recognition, finding someone who understood the weight of carrying others' lives in your hands. I am, he said simply. Without warning, Kira kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative, but when Jake responded, pulling her against him, the kiss deepened. Her skin was warm against his, and he could taste something like lightning and honey. The connection between them flared brighter, and suddenly he could feel her centuries of loneliness, her desperate hope, her growing love for him. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Jake, she whispered, come with me. Not just to save my people, but because I can't imagine existing without you now. The apartment door exploded inward. Black-clad figures poured in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Jake instinctively moved to shield Kira, but she was already moving, her body flowing like liquid mercury. She touched the lead agent's forehead, and he collapsed instantly. Neural disruption, she explained to Jake's shocked expression. Temporary. But more agents were coming, and Jake could hear windows breaking as they rappelled down from the roof. Kira grabbed his hand, her skin burning hot now, and pulled him toward the fire escape. My ship is in Lake Huron, she said as they ran. But Jake, once we leave this building, there's no going back. Your government will never stop hunting us. They reached the fire escape just as another team of agents burst through the bedroom window. Jake looked back at his apartment, at the life he'd built from the ashes of his military service, then at Kira's face, beautiful, alien, and full of desperate hope. I made my choice the moment I kissed you, he said. They climbed down the fire, escape as the building swarmed with agents above them. At the bottom, Kira pressed her palm against a parked car, and it started instantly. Electromagnetic manipulation, she explained, sliding into the driver's seat. Another evolutionary advantage. As they drove away from the only home Jake had known for years, he felt the weight of his decision settling on him. But when he looked at Kira, saw the determination in her violet eyes and felt the love flowing between them through their growing bond, he knew he'd made the right choice. So, he said, trying to lighten the mood as sirens wailed behind them, "Tell me about this ship of yours." Kira smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked genuinely happy. "It's going to change your life, Jake Morrison. I think you already did that." Behind them, the government agents were mobilizing for a citywide search. Ahead lay the lake, and beyond that, the stars. But for now, Jake was content to sit beside this impossible woman and feel their connection growing stronger with each mile they traveled toward their uncertain future. The stolen car's engine screamed as Kira pushed it beyond its limits, weaving through Detroit traffic with inhuman precision. Jake gripped the door handle, watching the speedometer climb past 90 as they merged onto I-75 North. "How far to your ship?" he shouted over the engine noise. 43 miles, Kira replied, her violet eyes focused on the road ahead. "But we have a problem." Jake looked back to see a convoy of black SUVs gaining on them, flanked by helicopters. "They're fast." "That's not the problem." Kira's jaw tightened. "They're herding us toward a checkpoint. I can sense the electromagnetic barriers they're setting, up ahead." Sure enough, as they crested a hill, Jake could see a roadblock spanning all lanes of the highway. Military vehicles, spike strips, and what looked like some kind of energy field shimmering across the road. "Can we go around?" "Not without losing too much time. My ship is programmed to leave if I don't return by sunset. It's a safety protocol to prevent capture." She glanced at him, and Jake could feel her internal struggle through their connection. "I won't let them take you, Jake. They'll dissect you to understand our bond." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "What are you saying?" Instead of answering, Kira yanked the wheel hard right, sending their car skidding off the highway and down an embankment into a wooded area. They crashed through undergrowth for 50 yards before the car finally stopped, steam rising from its crumpled hood. "We run from here," Kira said, already moving. They abandoned the car and plunged deeper into the forest. Jake's military training kicked in. Stay low, use cover, watch for pursuit patterns. But Kira moved like nothing he'd ever seen, flowing between trees with liquid grace, her silver skin adapting to blend with shadows and dappled sunlight. "There," she said, pointing to a clearing ahead where something massive glinted between the trees. Jake's breath caught. Kira's ship was beautiful and terrifying, a sleek, organic-looking craft that seemed to be grown rather than built. It was easily 200 feet long, with smooth curves that reflected the forest around it like a mirror. "Cloaking field," Kira explained, seeing his amazement. "It bends light around the hull." They were almost to the ship when the forest exploded around them. Government agents rappelled from helicopters emerging from behind trees in perfect formation. At their head was a tall man in a dark suit, his face hard and professional. "Agent Collins," Kira said, recognition in her voice. "We've been monitoring your communications." "I'm sure you have," Collins replied, his weapon trained on them. "Ms., what should I call you?" "Kira will suffice." "Kira, then. You're under arrest for violation of airspace, unlawful entry, and kidnapping of a U.S. citizen." "Kidnapping?" Jake stepped forward angrily. "She didn't kidnap anyone. I came willingly." Collins's eyes flicked to him, calculating. "Did you, Mr. Morrison? Or did she use some form of mind control? Alien influence that you're not even aware of?" The question hit Jake harder than he expected. Was what he felt for Kira real, or was it somehow manufactured by their neural connection? For a moment, doubt crept in. Kira must have sensed it through their bond because she turned to him, her expression pained. "Jake, no. What we feel, it's real. I would never manipulate your emotions." "How can we be sure?" Collins pressed. "You admit to performing neural synchronization on him without consent. How do we know you haven't altered his brain chemistry? Because, Jake said, finding his certainty again, I know what manipulation feels like. I've been in psychological warfare situations. This isn't that. He looked at Kira, seeing the hurt in her violet eyes, and felt their connection pulse with genuine emotion. Love, fear, hope, desperation. This is choice. Collins nodded to his team, and they began closing in. Mr. Morrison, step away from the alien. We can decontaminate you, reverse any influence. There's nothing to reverse. Jake moved closer to Kira instead of away. She's not some invader here to conquer Earth. Her people are dying and she came looking for help. Help that conveniently requires you to leave the planet, Collins said dryly. How do we know this isn't reconnaissance for an invasion? Kira's patience finally snapped. Because we have no need to invade anyone. Her voice carried a harmonic undertone that made the air itself vibrate. We're dying out, you fool. We have the technology to take any world we wanted, but we chose to ask for help instead. To demonstrate her point, she gestured toward the encircling agents. Each of their weapons suddenly sparked and went dead, their electronics fried by some unseen force. Stand down, Collins barked, but his team was already reaching for backup weapons. Kira, don't, Jake said, sensing her rising anger through their bond. They're scared, they don't understand. They're going to separate us, she replied, her skin beginning to glow with that silver luminescence. They'll lock me in a lab and, you in a cell, and my people will die while your government tries to reverse engineer our technology. Jake felt her power building, saw the way the air around her began to shimmer. She could probably disable every agent here, maybe even kill them if she wanted to. But he also felt her horror at that possibility, her desperate desire not to hurt anyone if she could avoid it. There's another way, he said quietly. What? Jake looked at the ship, then at the setting sun visible through the forest canopy. Maybe 2 hours of daylight left. How long does the bonding process take? Jake? No. Not like this. Not under duress. How long? He pressed. 20 minutes for the initial connection. But Jake, if we bond now, there's no going back. Ever. You'll be physiologically changed, genetically altered. You won't be fully human anymore. Jake looked around at the agents, at Collins' hard face, at the weapons trained on them. Then he looked at Kira, seeing all her hope and fear and love focused on him. I stopped being just human the moment I met you, he said. Before Collins could react, Jake pulled Kira toward the ship. Now, he shouted. Kira's ship responded to her presence, an opening irising wide in its side. They dove through just as Collins ordered his men to fire. Jake heard the crack of bullets against the hull, but the ship's material seemed to absorb the impacts without damage. Inside, the ship was all smooth curves and soft bioluminescent lighting. It felt alive, like being inside some vast organism. Jake, Kira said, turning to face him in the ship's corridor. Are you sure? Once we begin the bonding, once you're truly connected to me and my people, you can never come home again. Outside, Jake could hear Collins shouting orders, calling for heavy weapons. The ship shuddered slightly as something more powerful struck its hull. My home is with you now, Jake said, pulling her close. Show me how to save your people. Kira's smile was radiant as she led him deeper into the ship, toward a chamber that pulsed with warm golden light. Behind them, the forest filled with the sound of military vehicles and the whine of energy weapons charging up. Time was running out, but Jake felt nothing but certainty as he followed the woman he loved toward a future among the stars. The bonding chamber was breathtaking, a circular room with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal, pulsing with warm golden light that responded to their heartbeats. In the center was what looked like a bed, but it was more organic than any furniture Jake had ever seen, seeming to grow from the floor itself. Jake, Kira said, her voice soft with nervousness and anticipation, this is your last chance to change your mind. Once we begin, the genetic bonding will alter your DNA permanently. You'll gain some of our abilities, our longevity, but you'll also carry the responsibility of saving an entire species. Outside, the ship shuddered under heavy weapons fire. Jake could hear Collins shouting orders through a bullhorn, demanding their surrender. But all of that seemed distant now, unimportant compared to the woman standing before him with tears of liquid silver running down her cheeks. "I've never been more sure of anything," Jake said, reaching out to wipe away her tears. The silver droplets felt warm against his fingers, tingling with energy. "How does it work?" "Physical and emotional intimacy creates the neural pathway," Kira explained, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the fastenings of her bodysuit. "The deeper the connection, the more complete the bond. We share everything. Memories, emotions, genetic patterns." The ship suddenly lurched and Jake heard alarms beginning to sound. "How long do we have?" "My ship's AI will initiate emergency departure in 18 minutes if the hull integrity drops below 60%, Kira said. "The bonding needs at least 20 minutes to complete safely." Jake felt a moment of panic, but then Kira's hands cupped his face and their neural connection flared to life. Through it, he felt her absolute trust in him, her willingness to risk everything for this moment. "Then we make it work," he said, pulling her close. What followed was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. As they came together, their mental connection deepened with each touch, each kiss, each whispered endearment. He felt Kira's memories flowing into him. Centuries of loneliness, the slow death of her species, her desperate journey across the galaxy to find him. And she experienced his memories in return. The weight of command in Syria, the guilt over fallen comrades, the emptiness of his life before she arrived. But more than memories, they shared emotions at a level that transcended human experience. Jake felt Kira's love for him not as an abstract concept, but as a living thing, warm and electric in his veins. And she felt his love in return, his wonder at her beauty, his determination to help her people no matter the cost. As their physical intimacy reached its peak, Jake felt something fundamental shift inside him. His vision became sharper, colors more vivid. He could sense the ship around them as if it were an extension of his own body, feel the electromagnetic patterns of the attacking forces outside. His DNA was rewriting itself, incorporating Valorian genetic patterns while retaining his essential humanity. "Jake," Kira gasped, her silver skin now glowing bright enough to illuminate the entire chamber. "I can feel them. My people. They're waiting for us." Through their bond, Jake saw flashes of Valorian cities, beautiful but sterile, populated by beings who moved with perfect efficiency, but no joy. He felt their collective loneliness, their gradual fade into extinction, and suddenly understood the magnitude of what he'd chosen to take on. "I'm ready," he said, and meant it. The bonding reached completion just as the ship's hull integrity, alarms reached critical levels. Jake felt the change settle into his bones, his enhanced senses now fully integrated with his consciousness. He was still human, but more than human, a bridge between two species. "We have to go," Kira said, helping him to his feet. But Jake noticed he wasn't dizzy or disoriented as he'd expected. His new Valorian-enhanced physiology was already adapting. They made their way to the ship's bridge, where holographic displays showed the tactical situation outside. Collins had brought in military support. Tanks, aircraft, some kind of energy cannon that was systematically wearing down the ship's defenses. "Can we make it to space?" Jake asked. "Barely." Kira's hands moved over controls that looked more like musical instruments than technology. "But Jake, once we leave Earth's atmosphere, we can't come back. My ship doesn't have the fuel for another interplanetary journey." Jake looked at the tactical display, seeing his home planet laid out in holographic detail. Somewhere down there were his friends, his old life, everything familiar. But when he looked at Kira, felt their bond humming with shared purpose, he knew he was making the right choice. "Then let's go save your people," he said. The ship rose from the forest clearing like a silver star, shedding its camouflage to reveal its true beauty. Jake watched on the displays as Collins and his team scrambled to track them, their weapons useless against Valorian technology. As they broke through the atmosphere, and Earth fell away below them, Jake felt a moment of profound loss. But Kira's hand found his, their bond pulsing with shared determination and love. "Thank you," she whispered, "for choosing us, for choosing me." "Thank you for finding me," Jake replied. The journey to the Valorian home system took 3 days in hyperspace, during which Jake learned more about his new abilities and the civilization he was joining. His enhanced physiology meant he could survive in environments that would kill a normal human. His lifespan was now measured in centuries rather than decades, and his neural connection to Kira allowed them to communicate on levels beyond language. When they finally arrived at Valeris Prime, Jake was stunned by its beauty. The planet was a jewel of silver and blue, with vast cities that floated among the clouds and oceans that sparkled with bioluminescent life. The Valorian High Council welcomed them with formal ceremony, but Jake could sense their desperation beneath the protocol. These were a people on the edge of extinction, clinging to hope that he represented their salvation. "The first children will be crucial," explained Elder Thane, the council's leader. "They must carry both species' traits, our longevity and abilities, but with restored emotional capacity." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. But when he looked at Kira, now officially his bonded mate in Valorian terms, he felt only excitement for their future together. 6 months later, Jake stood in the floating gardens of New Valoris, watching the sunset paint the crystal spires in shades of gold and rose. His hand rested on Kira's growing belly, feeling the life moving within. Their first child, the first of a new generation that would bridge 2 worlds. "Any regrets?" Kira asked, her violet eyes twinkling with mischief. Jake considered the question seriously. He missed coffee, missed the changing seasons of Michigan, missed the simple pleasures of his old life. But he'd also discovered wonders beyond imagination. Cities that sang with harmonic crystals, oceans where thought became reality, the profound joy of a love that transcended species. "Just one," he said finally. Kira's expression grew concerned. "What?" "I regret not asking you to wake me up more gently that first morning," Jake said with a grin. "I nearly had a heart attack." Kira laughed, the sound like silver bells, and Jake felt their bond pulse with shared joy. Around them, other Valorians paused in their activities to listen, drawn by the sound of genuine happiness, something they hadn't heard in their city for centuries. As the alien sun set over his new home, Jake Morrison realized he'd found something he'd never even known he was looking for, a purpose that matched the size of his heart, and a love that could bridge the stars themselves. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, difficult questions about what it meant to be human in an age of genetic fusion, political complications as more humans inevitably learned about the Valorians. But for now, Jake was content to hold his alien wife and feel their child's heartbeat, knowing that sometimes the most impossible choices led to the most extraordinary destinies. His journey from a washed-up soldier in Detroit to the savior of an alien species had begun with waking up next to a stranger. Now, as he prepared to help birth a new civilization, Jake couldn't imagine any other path his life could have taken. After all, the best adventures always began with saying yes to the impossible.